Let's move on into another subject that's near and dear to my heart.
Okay.
Women in traditional Orisha, West African Orisha practice. There's been a lot of conversations throughout, in the last couple of years, throughout the groups about women's rights of initiation, or what women can and cannot do in this practice. Can you just give us an overview of your experience and your teachings as to women in West African Orisha practice?
Well, within our tradition, both genders are of extreme importance. There is nothing done without the other in all aspects. Obviously, there are some realms in which women are predominant, and that's normal. That's to be had, and it should be like that. There's other realms where men are predominant. That's going to happen. We have the Ifa priesthood, for example, that's predominantly male, and it's always been predominantly male. That hasn't changed, although nowadays we do have more women getting involved and initiated into the Ifa, and going through Iyanifa, even becoming students and even practicing a priesthood within Ifa. But it's something that has grown exponentially, and that's not necessarily bad or good. I think it's good personally, because the role of women should always be something present. We need to be reminded of the importance of the role of women participating. I specifically chose this path because I knew that women's role was more important. For me, there are certain things that were essential within the practice that made me choose specifically this path. And one of them was the fact, or is the fact, that women play such a strong role. I mean, people are going to say that, sure, they play a strong role in other religions, let's say Candomblé and the Cuban, the Lukumi tradition. But I've seen it differently. I've seen in Yoruba land women to be proficient diviners, people performing the actual master of ceremony role, not someone playing a supporting role. I've seen supporting roles as well, but I've also seen that with men. So my experience over the course of 20 years of going annually to Yoruba land, staying months at a time, is quite different. It's actually quite refreshing. I feel personally that the trend has been Ifa initiation. It's been, it's important, it's good, but I think women need to now, and it's changing, revisit the possibility of getting involved into other Orisha traditions as well. And the reason why is because our tradition is, like I said, the last session, it's a mosaic. It's a continuum of all these different deities together that work cooperatively. So men and women should be filling all these different niches. There's no way to be able to know it all. So we need people to specialize. And we're getting there. Gradually, as people travel back and forth to Yoruba land, go through initiation and training, people are gradually filling niches. But there has to be, for both genders, an actual acceptance of the fact that this takes a lot of time, a lot of dedication to learn, a lot of personal sacrifice. And not everyone's ready. And that's okay too, if they're honest and genuine with themselves and others. Those that are have a great deal of work on their hands.
Now, the way you phrased the opening statement, you said something to the fact that it was a trend moving in the direction. Are you insinuating that this is something new in traditional West African Orisha, that women are taking the role of Iyanifa, to say, for lack of a better example, or is this something that's always been in existence?
Got it. Well, I will say it's new in the sense of the exponential growth. That much I will say is new. And that's okay. We have nothing to hide. We know that change occurs. One thing that has occurred is that there's been many more women to get initiated within the Ifa priesthood, whereas in olden days that was rare. The references we see through in oral literature, speaking to our elders, as well as some of the literature that is not always reliable, and quite often not, in written literature, is that it was quite rare. But it did exist.
It did exist.
Especially in situations where, let's say, a Babalawo didn't have male children. And it depends on the region as well. So in order for the worship not to die out among the blood lineage members, then women would also be initiated. This occurs not only with Ifa. This has occurred even within Egungun. Most people say, no, women are not involved in Egungun. They actually are. Sometimes, however, many times women don't have necessarily an initiation within an Egungun priesthood or society, but they have actual titles. But they do have function. They do have ritual work that they go through. There are, however, instances where a woman could actually hold quite a title that normally men would bear. And I've seen this years ago where, maybe I believe the father had passed away. So one of the daughters, the senior daughters, took over the title of the father. Eventually, a male would take over, but that woman functions as a filler of that title, plays that role. There's also a documentary, I forgot the name of the gentleman. He's a documentarian, I believe an anthropologist, that did some work about it, the role of women in Egungun, and it speaks about that. And they actually interviewed.
So
yeah,
it's
it's
on
good.
YouTube. It's on YouTube, right? Yeah.
It's either on YouTube or Vimeo, one of these.
I think I saw it on YouTube.
Well, he actually interviewed a woman from Iragbiji, who's the Esson of Iragbiji, and I was shocked. I mean, not so shocked because I had met someone else carrying a high title within the Egungun that was a woman, carrying a non-female title, but she was carrying Esson, which is usually male throughout Yoruba land. So that was interesting. But I accept it. It doesn't mean that women are trying to usurp the role of men at all. That's not the point. I think things change. Things are changing for men and women. We're looking for better quality of life for our Orisha people, and that obviously involves women and other gender or other groups of people that are somehow going through an oppressed state and need a better quality of life, need more choices, more opportunities, just like anyone else. So that much is positive. I personally don't have any issue with it, and I don't have an issue with telling the truth that it has grown exponentially. There's nothing wrong with that. It's a fact. If it was rare in the past, that's the past. And we know about it. Even the literature reminds us of what remains the same and what has changed. And people are active participants. They don't just sit around and let things happen. Men and women come together, elders, and they shape the tradition. There's a critique of the way things are going. If they're not going according to the approval of elders, eventually it's going to find its way to get back on course. So we can't leave it all to the deities. The deities don't actually come and say, through possession, the way things need to be. We learned this from human beings. That's why we have apprenticeship. So we are able to shape our community, and that's happening in quite a positive way. We do have to analyze certain things and have some self-reflection to improve our practice as we manifest positive change.
Well, so you're saying the volume of the activity of women being initiated into Ifa has grown, but we do have women that have been in Ifa for 50, 40 years. I personally met one myself in Ibadan, and those titles are not made up. They're not something that just came about recently. Yes. They've been in the literature, and there are individuals that hold those positions. So we're talking about what women can do in traditional West African Orisa practice. What are some of the things that women absolutely cannot do?
Well, one thing is Oro, the cult or priesthood of Oro. That's a no-go area for women. But other than that, and then of course there's Igbaudu. Within Ifa priesthood, Igbaudu is off limits for women. Other than that, there really isn't much else that women can do. Women can be herbalists. Women can be Kawisha diviners. They can perform Eboriru. They can perform initiation ceremonies for many Orisha. In some areas, it's women that do most of the work. And some people may be surprised to see that. I'm not. I mean, it was always a pleasant fact for me that within the tradition I practiced, women play such a tremendous role and are, embody all the oral literature that they use during initiation ceremonies. Women are what will make any kind of event enjoyable through the poetry, the dancing, and their participation in different ways. So that role of women is quite important.
Are you willing to share some of the literature that supports why women are not a part of those two specific roles in West African Orisa practice?
Well, it's even said in Proverbs. Odo is a no-go area. Igbaudu also is a no-go area. I won't recite. I'm not into reciting too many verses online. I've done it before, but it's something I try not to do. Um, but Fumiji also speaks about the relationship between Oromela and Odu, and how she did not want other women to see her, including his wives. So it talks about that. But within Yoruba culture, it's known that Oro is a no-go area, Ibaudu as well. Egungun, it depends on the area, it depends on what role. Can't go into details because by speaking of certain items, sacred objects, those are things that we're privy to, those that are initiated into the Egungun society. So we won't speak about that. But other than that, women can do so much. And I'm not speaking of women being seamstresses. I'm not speaking of women being cooks. I'm not speaking of women, playing all those other important roles, but supporting roles. I'm speaking of actual, what is priestly work, for example? What does priestly work involve? Someone comes for seeking help, seeking communion with the deity, communication. So a priest or priest is one that learns the body of knowledge to deal with the worship of the deities. And not just their personal deity, as any Olurisha, any Babalawo, any Oje, any Onisegun, if they practice Orisha, they have to learn about various deities, especially Ori, Eshu, Ogun, Obatala, Oshun, Ifa. All these are pretty across the board. So we have to have a body of knowledge to, at least if it's not specialized, got the basics to deal with various deities. The deities don't function in isolation, and we also do not. So when a woman gets a client, a woman should be able to divine for the individual that comes seeking help, providing offerings to those deities, provide solution, perform ebo, even offer whatever offering is needed, whether it be food or whether it be life force. So those are the priestly roles. And even chanting, the poetry, the oral literature of each priesthood, each Orisha that's specific to that deity. Women and men have to do that.